Welcome to the Journal of the Southwest Radio Hour podcast, a production of the University of Arizona Southwest Center in the School of Global Studies. I'm Jeff Bannister. My guest today is Alex La Pierre, co-founding director with his wife Rocío La Pierre of the binational Southern Arizona-based nonprofit Borderlandia. Borderlandia's mission is to expand public understanding of the U.S. Mexico borderlands through a diversity of activities, including especially educational tours in southern Arizona and in Sonora, Mexico. I ask Alex about this work and about his view of public history more broadly, and we also talk about how perceptions of the borderlands region seem to become more distorted the farther away one gets. We hope you enjoy this episode of the JSW Radio Hour and that you're inspired to learn more about Borderlandia and its many educational offerings. Alex La Pierre, welcome to Journal of the Southwest Radio. Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so you're the co-founding director of Borderlandia. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your organization does, what it's about, its mission, the kind of work that you're doing in the world?
Yeah, definitely. So Borderlandia is a binational organization committed to building public understanding of the borderlands. And it's binational because it was founded by my wife, who's from Mexico, and myself. And we have three main programs that we see out. We see out a tour program here in both Arizona and Sonora, and also further afield in Mexico. And then we also offer public presentations and talks. And we also publish a bi-monthly digital magazine that focuses on kind of cultural topics around our region as well. And we got this project started because we saw the potential of getting Americans and Mexicans together and what the possibilities that could lead to. And also kind of a really a strong desire in our parts to share the good news about the borderlands. The 98% that you're not seeing on the national news media, we're kind of being constantly drilled in by those forces of, the unholy trifecta of, narcos, violence, and immigration. And we really want to show that the borderlands is so much more than just that.
Mm-hmm. And what is that story that you're trying to tell? Tell us a little bit more about that.
The inspiration for Borderlandia was I worked for the National Park Service at Timacacri, and we got together with our Mexican counterparts, Mexico's National Institute for Anthropology and History, and we got together in a very special place that both you, Jeff, and I are familiar with, Alamos. And obviously, these two worlds coming together that normally wouldn't get together in normal circumstances, it led to so many friendships. It led to future work, future research, future collaborations. And in my case, it led to a marriage and a 7-month-old boy now. Coming back to the United States where, the story, the narrative of Mexico is totally opposite to almost every encounter that I had in Mexico. I felt like there was some disconnect. And growing up in the borderlands myself, I grew up in San Diego, California. There was, growing up and being curious about Mexico, there was kind of nobody to kind of show me the way. And so I saw the potential for helping people have meaningful experiences in the borderlands. And so that's why we founded Borderlandia.
Mm-hmm. And I know your focus is pretty historical. I know that's not exclusively historical, but a lot of what you do is kind of help people understand the profound or the depth of the history of this region. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Tell us, how you try to convey that, the means by which you do, and sort of what it means for you to be I guess you could say a borderlander situating your own life in this deeper history.
Yeah, as a young boy, I've always been fascinated by history. I grew up with my grandfather telling me, stories of World War II and his experiences, and I think history is a really powerful tool that gets often kind of cast aside for mathematics and science, but it's it's really the collective memory of humankind, what we can resurrect of it through documentation, through archaeology. In our country, we seem to have this, historical amnesia. We don't even know about our own country's history, let alone that of our neighbor. And I think that if we did, if that was the opposite was true, I think we'd have a lot more empathy for our neighbors and kind of understanding how things got to be here in the U.S. Mexican borderlands, how they ended up today as it is. One of the first questions, as a baby is why. And so that's something that's always kind of stoked this historical aspect of Borderlandia and, my background as a public historian. I'm trying to get a little bit of that stuff out of academia and, kind of dust the libraries and into the public's hands and kind of have this in place learning environment.
Mm-hmm. And you are, if I'm not mistaken, you and Rocío are down in Tubac or Tumacacri area. Is that right?
Yeah. We're kind of now in Tumacacri, Rio Rico area, so it's perfect for kind of being in between Tucson and also Sonora.
Mm-hmm. So how do you? What are the different means by which you're telling the story of this place? And what is for you? What is the extent of what is your borderlands?
Yeah, for me, it's really it's a third nation. That's kind of like where the idea of the name for our organization came out of, because oftentimes if you're from, let's say, Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and you tell someone that's from Mexico City, oh, you're from Mexico, they'll kind of disparage you and say, oh, you're from the border town. That's not the quote unquote real Mexico. Or if I tell somebody that, I'm only like a couple dozen miles from the Mexican border in the Sonoran Desert, if I tell somebody from New York or Chicago that, they'll be like, oh, you're practically in Mexico. So we're kind of not good enough for either country. So that's why we make the argument that we're the third country. And another thing that we say a lot too is that, the further you are from this area, the bigger, the further you are from the border, the bigger the myth of the border is. And so that's the other idea behind the name, is this kind of, it seems like people that are in northern parts of our country, they can feel like our borderlands is a war zone. And so what we're doing is trying to basically be on kind of like the front trenches of changing people's hearts and minds, kind of their perceptions of what northern Mexico and our neighbors are like. And so the tours are great because we get to connect Americans with Mexicans and let Mexicans speak for themselves and hear what they have to say. Because on the news media, it's usually some bigwig in DC or Mexico City that's talking about the border. But far few times we hear from people that are Borderlands residents and especially people on the Mexican side. And so I think it's really gratifying to be able to showcase their voices on these tours and trips.
Mm-hmm. And so where are you taking people? And what are some of the topics that you're covering?
One of it's everything from history, nature, culture, food. One of our favorite trips is to Alamos, the colonial silver city of Alamos in the dry tropics, the far south of the state. And that's such a fun trip because you basically do the whole length of the state of Sonora, going everywhere from Nogales, 4,000 feet in elevation, through Hermosillo, the burgeoning cosmopolitan metropolis in the heart of the state, all the way down past Obregon and just the agricultural juggernaut that you can see it is, passing through all those silos. So it's a great way to kind of also narrate the story of Sonora on that Alamos trip. My whole love affair with Sonora actually became at what became a result of a U of A ethnographic field school that I did in 2015 to the real Sonora region, to Banamichi. And so that also inspired this organization. And so we bring people to the Rio Sonora, Arizpe, those magical towns all in that Sonoran heartland. We do a culinary tour of Hermosillo. We've taken people to Rocky Point in the UNESCO Biosphere of Pinacate. A lot of places that I feel like if you live in Southern Arizona, at least once in your life, you need to see them.
Nice. Yeah. So take us on a little deep dive in Hermosillo, for instance. I want to know a little bit more about what the food scene is there. I've heard that, I haven't actually, I'm mostly at my desk checking emails these days, so I haven't been hanging out in
Yeah.
Sonora like I did. What is the, but I've heard that the food scene in Hermosillo is pretty incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, what I say, it's really one of the best food cities in North America, on our continent, that nobody's talking or writing about. The fact that of its geographic location, right in between the Sea of Cortez or the Gulf of California, and it's what Jacques Cousteau called the aquarium of the world. So home to some of the richest marine life and a long seafood tradition. And then the other eastern half of the state being, the Sierra Madre foothills, where some of the best beef in the whole Republic of Mexico comes from. And so Hermosillo is really on the convergence of those, surf and turf frontiers, and so just the quality, the freshness. There's no better place to have it than from the actual land where it comes from. And so Hermosillo's food scene and the value, of course, that you get with the peso dollar exchange rate is it's really incredible. Scallops that you could imagine paying top dollar for in places like LA and Chicago that are so affordable and reasonably priced, or the best cuts of meat, that Netflix are doing entire shows about, just a taqueria in Hermosillo. We take people there too, and so we've heard from guests, we've heard everything from wow, I feel like I'm in Europe, to like I had no idea this existed, and for me it's gratifying to see that kind of shift in people's perceptions, because it tells us that we're doing some good work, and hopefully it'll create social ripples.
Yeah, well, I think it sounds like you might have come up with just now with a title for a great book that I hope you write.
Yeah, yeah.
Surf and turf frontiers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Sonora's always given kind of a paltry, maybe half a dozen pages in any kind of Mexico guidebook. And so definitely there's so much to be out there that needs to be explored and enjoyed and shared.
Are you running a trip just to Hermosillo for that, or is Hermosillo kind of a way station along a longer route?
That's right. Yeah, we have a Hermosillo culinary tour because so many people are just kind of like barreling through Hermosillo to go to the Gulf of California beaches, and we want to make the case that you need to stop and take Hermosillo real seriously. The cultural scene, the city's growth. It's a real vibrant part of northwestern Mexico that people could kind of give another eye and thought to. And so that's why we want to bring people there. And of course, my wife's from there, and so it's kind of like a second home for me over the course of knowing each other over the last decade. And so it's kind of like bringing people to somewhere that we really we love and consider a part of us.
Nice, yeah. And I see that you also have a taco tour of Nogales. Is that right? Do you still do that, or you had it one time?
Yeah, that's actually been one of our most popular tours, and I like that one so much because kind of turning the conception of Nogales on its head, because many people will tell you, oh, don't go to Nogales, it's dangerous, and we've had the funnest time on those tours, exploring the real amazing food scene in Nogales, because Nogales is a melting pot of people from all over Mexico, and they're bringing their regional styles into that town. And so we try to showcase that with 3 different places that we visit on the Nogales Taco Tour, and also explain how that amazing, huge border town came to be.
So it's what are the dynamics of the trip? I mean, do you meet in Nogales, Arizona, and walk across with your group? How does it work?
Yeah. Just because of the logistics of crossing the border in a vehicle you can be on the Mexican side and coming back from a trip and, waiting up to 3-4 hours to cross the border. So what we do is we meet our groups in Nogales, Arizona. We park in the U.S. side. We park on a secure parking lot, and then we just walk together as a group around through the main gate of the Genesee Conceding Crossing, and then just right up against the border line is our driver, professional driver, and our Mercedes Sprinter. We usually try to cap the guest list at 10 or 12 people, kind of keep it more small group and intimate for these kind of in-place learning opportunities, or enjoying the food of Nogales.
No, it sounds wonderful. I think I need to
Mm-hmm.
sign up as soon as you have another availability.
I would love for you, Jeff, to be there. That'd be fantastic. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think we need to do a Southwest Center outing, a Southwest Center Borderlandia outing, on the border sometime. I think that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, we can definitely. I mean, with Tucson's fame with the city of gastronomy, I mean, a lot of those routes stretch across the border there. So there's so much opportunity for kind of highlighting that with the
Yeah.
food heritage.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe, our faculty and staff too, we can just do a little special trip for, of course because we would need to pre-run this to see.
Yeah,
see
of
what it's
course.
like.
You gotta do the quality taste test before too.
Indeed, yeah. Tell me a little bit more about some of your other trips. You have one to the Rio Sonora, Banamichi area. What's what are you trying to highlight there, and describe the place a little bit? I mean, I definitely spent some time there and I love it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, one guest, while kind of hanging out in the plaza in the evening times, seeing the families and the kids playing into 10 p.m., he looked over to me and he said, "What is this, Mexican Mayberry?" And I kind of laughed, but I said, "Yeah, it's like it's amazing. It's almost in a way it's like an America that we've lost over the last half century, It's the Rio Sonora is like it's a place where it's only a day's drive from the border, but it feels like you're thousands of miles away from the United States. People look you in the eye, say good morning, good afternoon. I can't tell you how many times people have invited me into their homes for coffee. Absolute strangers. I can't tell you the last time that's happened in the United States. It's a really refreshing place to go and experience, and almost like beads on a rosary. You have all these missions going back from the 1600s. And when the English were barely reaching the other side of the continent, which is pretty incredible to think, and a really incredible old Opata culture in those four river valleys of eastern Sonora, and of course the Bacanora culture too, which is something that we actually have crafted an entire tour out of. And in the end of March 2025, we'll be headed up on our third iteration of the Bacanora tour to the town of Bacanora and also Sahuaripa, where we'll be connecting with the Northern Jaguar project and the folks over at La Tierra de Jaguar. So we're calling that tour the Jaguars and Bacanora tour. And so we're really excited to offer that one too, kind of in that eastern Sonora Valley, similar to the Rio Sonora.
Excellent. And I think probably for the uninitiated, we might need a quick definition of Bacanora, and maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the process.
Yeah. So, you hear all these terms, mezcal, tequila, bacanora. Mezcal is the big umbrella of agave spirits in Mexico. The only thing that differentiates bacanora or tequila would be the species of agave. In the case of Sonora's bacanora, it would be agave angustifolia. And then the second variable is the geography. And so for Sonora, I believe it has to be one of the eastern 32 municipalities of the state of Sonora for it to have the denomination of origin, the legal requirement of the designation of the name for it to be Bacanora. And kind of the same thing for tequila, blue agave, and from the greater Jalisco region, there more in central western Mexico. And so on our Bacanora tour, we actually get to meet the people that make the Bacanora and see their viñatas, as they call them, their distilleries, and kind of learn about the fact that the industry really has had to catch up to tequila and mezcal and other places in Mexico because it was illegal up until the early 90s. And so it's been a rapid professionalization of the industry over the last 3 decades, from what was, almost a century of clandestine production.
Mm-hmm. And is that
Yeah.
has that been have you seen a pretty rapid growth in the production and consumption of it? What's happening there?
Yeah. I think that Bacanora is really kind of the latest darling of the agave spirits. A lot of publications are writing about it. It has led to over harvesting of the wild agaves, but a lot of people that are in the that make Bacanora, they are growing out they're saving seed, they're sharing seed. So we also see that process too. And so to make the product, you basically have to harvest the hearts of the agave. So you cut off all the leaves, and you drop about a ton worth of the hearts of the agaves into a stone-lined pit in the ground, where you've built a fire that's raged all night long. And once the fires died down, those stones in the pit are superheated, and so that's when you drop all those, I don't know, 70 hearts, and then you cover it with a piece of sheet metal, a mound of soil to conserve that heat energy, and you let it roast like 72 hours until it's completely cooked and cool. And then you would start to mash it up, those hearts, with the back of a two-handed axe for more surface area for fermentation. And then they go into the fermentation vats with water for about a week. And then you take that liquid to the two drums, the copper coil, the serpentine coil that has a cooling tank, and you fire it up, and you let it run it at least twice for a good Bacanora or mezcal or sotol.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the eastern kind of spine of Sonora, especially up and down the Rio Sonora, is sort of like a tour of old Sonora, an old of old culinary Sonora in some ways. Would you say, or what it is about the eastern part of Sonora that is preserving this tradition?
And one of the best books I ever read about Sonora was Robert West's Sonora, its geographical personality. And he talks about two Sonoras, the new western half and then the old eastern half. And kind of the phenomenon of this depopulation, this westward shift from the eastern part of the state to the west in 20th century, which driven by a lot of the growth of the big cities. A lot of these eastern towns, if the kids don't want to work in ranching or mining, the traditional trades up there, the towns, they go to study at the University of Sonora in Nogales or Obregon or Hermosillo, and then they just stay there and get a job in a different industry, or maybe they are attracted to the higher paying jobs in tourism in places like San Carlos or Rocky Point. And so with this like depopulation of the eastern Sonoran river towns, in a way, it's kind of like preserved this 3, 4 century, 5 century old Sonora in a way, which is very fascinating. And in a way, that's why I feel like going to the Rio Sonora, it feels like you're 2,000 miles away from the United States, but you're only a day's drive away.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that makes sense. And yet at the same time, of course, those are all communities that are contemporary with all of us in this moment. So they're shot through with all kinds of globalizing processes too. Can you see that tension as you're traveling in these communities?
Yeah. Banamichi has a mine, and like one of the most noteworthy things was the price of rents, kind of skyrocketed. A lot of businesses, a lot of families opened up rooms. There's a pretty good prosperity there, with a new mine in town that's foreign run by Canadians, and so there is still that attraction there. And then at the top of the river near the headwaters is of course the Grupo Mexico's Cananea mine, and so you kind of see how those forces of globalization are kind of eroding at the traditional lifeways of the Sonoran river towns.
Well, yeah, and of course there was the Cananea tailing pond spill of a few years ago down the Rio Sonora. Was obviously a pretty big deal.
Yeah, they're still seeking some sort of justice for that to this day.
Yeah, I guess that kind of makes me want to ask you a little bit about, somebody who has been traveling in Northwest Mexico, and I know you all also go to Mexico City and other places. So maybe I'll broaden the question. As somebody who has been traveling in Mexico pretty intensively for the past several years, what are you seeing in the U.S.'s neighbor to the south? What are some of the present day dynamics that you see shaping it?
Well, it's exciting to see a growing middle class, a growing nonprofit sector. Just the economic potential of Mexico is just incredible, and it's clear as day. Just coming down to Nogales, you don't even have to cross the border if you don't want to. But the county seat of Santa Cruz County here, Nogales, Arizona, USA, maybe has 20,000 people, and it's dying economically. Whereas Nogales, Sonora, Mexico maybe has like 500,000 people. It's got about 80 multinational factories, like names people would recognize, like Master Lock, Otis Elevator. Probably your garage door opener was fabricated there. I mean, those companies often never take the help wanted signs down, and they run shifts that are 24/7. And those border towns are really, that's another kind of wave of migration, that internal wave from the south of Mexico, central parts where wages are a little bit more depressed compared to the border towns. There's a lot of people that are being attracted to the higher paying wages that are in places like Nogales, and just to see the growth there, and of course just the purchasing power of Sonorans in our state. It's really something incredible, and of course the billions and billions of dollars worth of fresh produce trade. Sonora is I think one of the only states in Mexico with two consulates, and they're only U.S. consulates. They're only a few hours away from each other. But I think the importance of the Nogales consulate is just that element of food security for the rest of North America, because of all that fresh produce that goes and feeds the rest of North America during the cold winter months. So for food security, it's really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So,
can you talk a little bit more about that network, that pretty extensive and dense network of food provision from Mexico to the U.S., and what's the role of Nogales in all of that?
Yeah, well, the two agricultural juggernauts, the two states for Mexico in North American agricultural trade is Sinaloa and Sonora, and their geography is perfect. They get all the melt from the Sierra Madres, and they're close to the Gulf of California, and so they don't often freeze. And so that's another reason why this Western Sonora is becoming New Sonora, is because of the development of all these agribusinesses really since the early 90s. And so these two states are really feeding the rest of North America, throughout the year, but primarily in the winter months, because of the right geography for agriculture and the lesser cost of labor in Mexico as well. And this goes back, the wheat that would go on to feed the world during the Green Revolution was developed in the Yaqui River Valley by Norman Burlock. And so this agricultural history is really, really important. And I don't know if it's very familiar with Americans. And so it's just one way in which we really need to be good neighbors with Mexico.
Yeah, it's an interesting moment for that. I mean, I think that sort of the tone of Washington right now is such that it would seem to jeopardize, that relationship. And I think that's, the work that you and Rocio are doing, introducing people to what I can see in a lot of ways is just the depth of the interconnections that create this region, the U.S. Southwest and northern Mexico. I mean, I think it's so important because, as you said earlier, the farther away you get from the border, the more detached, from the border, actually existing border dynamics, the story becomes.
Definitely. Yeah, and we want to provide a service for the public so I know a lot of people don't feel safe about traveling in Mexico, and so that's why we exist too, is to make people feel comfortable, kind of show them the ropes. And of course we want them to come on all of our tours, but if they just come on just one, it's their opportunity to see for themselves and make up their own mind rather than relying on what's often sensationalism in the media. Which is really a tragedy. For me, the notion that a lot of Americans have closed their mind to even the thought of visiting Mexico. It's sad because, I really grew up with that philosophy from Mr. Rogers of won't you be my neighbor, and I think that's something that we're losing. And so we're trying to put our little grain of sand towards not losing that. We have a geographical obligation to prove to the rest of the country that we can be good neighbors here in Arizona and Sonora.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, however, there is the violence I think this kind of proliferation of organized crime and all the things that are connected to all that, and of course directly connected to consumption on this side and of the border. And the U.S. has become a rather violent society. I think all of these things are connected. I guess my question there is, when people ask on your trips about that, about the violence connected to all this, and how do you talk about it with them?
Yeah, it's definitely something to be concerned about and to look out for, and it's something that we definitely look out for as an organization. Absolutely. But the good thing about us is, we often have connections with the people in different towns. And so we hear from them whether things are safe or not, and what the reality is. Oftentimes, people come with us with the State Department warnings about
Mm-hmm.
Mexico. And one thing I tell them, guests, about that is just one exercise is to check out the State Department from the UK or from France or from Canada and see what they have to say about traveling to certain places in the United States. And I think if a lot of Americans read those travel warnings, they would never go to Phoenix or Chicago or New York again. So yeah, anywhere you go, you have to be careful nowadays. Even if you're a 7 or 8 year old school child walking to school. And so, there's no short of violence on this side of the border. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, because of the insatiable appetite Americans have for illicit drugs, the narcos they're just following the laws of capitalism. But one thing that we tell guests too is that, they want nothing to do with Americans. It's bad for their business if anything happens to an American. And so we usually stay out of areas that are known for high mafia activity and stuff. But just like anywhere, you have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about before we close out here. I'd like to know a little bit about your story. I know you alluded to it a little bit. You said you grew up in San Diego, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, how did you tell us a little bit more about how, what it is about growing up there that so pulled you into what you do now? And I'm asking you this question in a very self-interested kind of way because I think we talked about this before. I grew up in San Diego also, and I too have a real deep love for and connection with Mexico. And I feel like in some ways for me and probably for you too, it was just sort of in the air growing up in San Diego. but as a non-Mexican, it has some interesting tensions and dynamics also.
Yeah, no, definitely. My maternal side, my grandparents were from Italy, and we kind of grew up in a real Roman Catholic, like food first, family first culture. And growing up in California, I always kind of noticed that about Hispanic culture, and I always thought kind of like the greater Anglo-American culture was a lot colder and kind of a little more stiffer, and so I always kind of drew towards much more towards Mexican culture. I had the opportunity to help excavate the San Diego Presidio, Spanish colonial fortification that's right above Old Town San Diego, and being able to, at a young age, being able to help archaeologists bring to light artifacts that hadn't seen the light of day for maybe 2 or 3 centuries. That's just something that always stood with me. And both of my folks were in the hospitality industry. They worked for hotels, Hyatt, Wyndham, DoubleTree. And so, back in that time before the internet really kind of took hold, one of the jobs my mom had was a concierge. So she would, oftentimes hotel guests would ask her where to go out to eat or do an activity. And so a lot of Tijuana restaurateurs and activity places would invite her over there to let her see what the place would like to recommend it. And so we had opportunities and occasions to go over there and at a young age to see this whole different other kind of world way to live. One hallmark memory is when we went to the end of Revolution, the famous Revolution Avenue in Tijuana. There's one of the outlets of the Sanborn's department store, the Mexican department store, and they always have a restaurant. And probably one of my earliest memories is, going to that restaurant and seeing all the different Mexican juices and licuados, shakes, and all the beautiful pan dulce, Mexican sweetbread, and the waitresses in the traditional Mexican regional outfits. And then I think my heart was stolen. Then I eventually got a job with the National Park Service and tried any way to use history, my passion for Hispanic heritage in the Southwest, and to help protect that. And so I was able to do that at Fort Union National Monument, which is one of the old, biggest adobe forts in the Southwest outside of Las Vegas, New Mexico. Pecos, I was able to work there, the old Pueblo site, and old mission. And then finally, the love of my life, which is besides my wife and my son, Timakakari, was able to work there as well. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
So were you an interpretive ranger?
Yeah, I was an interpretive ranger, and I also worked on the historic preservation team at Fort Union and at Timakakari.
Oh, nice. Okay. So, and how did you study history in college, or what was your
History,
intellectual
yeah,
trajectory?
history.
Yeah. Okay. Where did you go to school?
At the University of Arizona.
Oh, nice. Okay. I thought that might have been the case, but
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that. So you have obviously a very kind of public history orientation. Was that something that as you were going through school, something that you were already aware of, or did it kind of, did that pathway sort of just open itself up to you, or?
Yeah. It really kind of, the National Park Service gave me those skills. That the art of heritage interpretation. When we think of interpretation, we think of like from one language to another, but like this art of how do we tell those stories in a way to the public that transmit that beautiful tapestry of American history. Like there's a real art and a real way of doing that, and it was something that I was able to learn and grasp and hone as a result of my time as an interpretive ranger for the Park Service. And so that's where I kind of blended all three worlds, kind of growing up in the hospitality industry with my folks, the history, and then also kind of that public communication work in order to found this organization with my wife.
Excellent. And so you and Rocío, I think people should probably know, and we'll definitely put up links in our show notes here. But to your organization. But you all have a fabulous website. It's beautiful. And I love that you have these, I can't think of the name of them, but there's these sort of interpretive, what do you call them? Infographic kind of pages and stuff where you tell different stories
Oh
about
yeah,
the region.
yeah.
You know,
It's
no, I was just going to say, yeah, I think that listeners would love to, if they haven't seen those already. I think there's a lot of great information there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my wife's a graphic designer, and so we've kind of united those two skill sets to offer the public Borderlandia, and yeah, it's a fun thing to kind of make history in a little bit more of a digestible way through the infographics, and so we've got a lot of positive feedback from those.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are doing there. I mean, I think that I've been the director of the Southwest Center for, I guess, 6 years now, and of course, when I had been working here for a pretty long time before that, but when you're directing something, the dynamics can change pretty quickly, and it took me a while to figure out what my role here would be. And I think that one of the things that we've tried to do over the last few years is to really use the Southwest Center as a vehicle for communicating, so much of this scholarship that's produced at this university and beyond that is so amazing, and yet not, oftentimes not very accessible to broader audiences. And so I really appreciate, the role that you guys are playing with Borderlandia in that same sense.
Well, my hat's off to you, Jeff, and for taking on the administrative role too, as a director of a department. That's no easy job either. But I can't tell you how much I've learned from the publication from the Southwest Department. I love the journal, and so in a way, I'm trying to also make what disseminate or diffuse a lot of the great information that you guys provide the public. So definitely, my hat's off to you. And there's so much synergy between Borderlandia and the journal and the Southwest Center. And so I look forward to future collaborations.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you. I actually, people should probably know also that you have a podcast on your Borderlandia website, along with all this other great stuff. So, people want to take a deeper dive, they can definitely have a listen there. It's really great. I guess before we part, I just wanted to ask if there's anything that anything more you want to tell us about your organization, yourselves, what you're doing, anything you think people should know, any upcoming trips, anything you want to let us know about.
Yeah, just this concept that we call citizen level diplomacy. Whether we like it or not, whenever we go to a different country, we're the face of our country to many people, because every interaction, that person that you interact with may never have the chance to visit the United States or Canada or wherever you're from. And so it's the idea of promoting good relations between two countries. It's not just at a high governmental level. It really is happens at a citizen to citizen level, and it's something that we really like to inflect into our work, our cross cultural exchange trips into Mexico and other places. And so we want to invite the public to join us on one of our future tours, whether it's even into Tucson on our Tucson historical tour, Nogales, maybe just a day trip to Magdalena to learn about the pilgrimage, or even further afield. And I just wanted to also thank you, Jeff, for having me on and for the good work of the U of A Southwest Center.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Alex. I think I will say selfishly, that's a great place to stop. I really appreciate the plug. And I really appreciate your time. And we'll definitely be keeping up with whatever it is you guys have going on. And please let us know also if you have any upcoming trips or anything. We're glad to put that in our newsletter and help you get the word out.
Fantastic. Appreciate you guys.